we have just pressed record on the webinar. So thank you everyone for signing up to the webinar. We thought this would be a really good way of giving as much information out to everyone who is interested in the charge while you sleep model that we're going for over the next few months and next year. We are going to do a short presentation and then a few polls in between. And then at the end of the presentation, which shouldn't take any more than 20 minutes or so, AD?
If that, yeah.
We will be asked, it will allow you to ask questions specific to your site or to your area. To ask questions, instead of just having to type in the box, all you have to do is press raise hand down at the bottom. That will let me know that you want to speak, and I will allow you to talk. Just make sure that your microphones are unmuted, but I'm sure you'll be fine. Everyone's quite good with Zoom now. I think we've got quite a few people in now, so I think we'll just go for it if you want, AD.
Cool. Yes, thanks, Tom. So we should have introduced ourselves. So that was Tom, and he sort of is the head of communications for Charge My Street. I'm AD. I'm the project manager, ostensibly, for the big Innovate. So Innovate UK are a sort of government, and it's not a government department, it's a government-funded body that provide funding for innovative ideas. And but we're just coming to the end of that. So this is why we're sort of on this call now, as we think about how Charge My Street and how community charging and how the whole EV rollout is going to happen, following the end of our project. This is one of the ideas. So as it says, charge while you sleep. So specifically for the overnight hospitality sector, and I use that in a sort of nice broad term. So, holiday lets, campsites, bed, breakfast, small hotels. That's the kind of thing that we feel isn't being, that's the area, the sector that isn't being addressed by the big commercial people. But we'll come to that in a second. So yes, and there's a nice picture of Tom now. So first, Charge My Street, I've just referred to as, for those of you who don't know, Charge My Street was a community benefit society. So that is basically a co-op. So we are owned by our community shareholders. The business is run by a board of volunteer directors. I'm not a director. Tom and I are employees. We work for the board and by extension for the community shareholders on two levels, to make the best of the community share investment, but also to make sure that we follow the ethos that we need to be doing this from a community aspect as well as a commercial aspect. So Charge My Street was set up in 2018 by 4 people local here in Lancaster who didn't have driveways but wanted to make the change to drive an EV. So they didn't have that option of just popping a charge point on their house and charging at home. So, thought, well, how we can do this? So the 2 of the directors approached first the City Council. If you just don't know the way it works here, City Council runs sort of car parks, but highways is the County Council. So they approached both the City Council, County Council, asked them what their plans were, and there was a sort of general shrug of the shoulders that they didn't have any. So they started to seek out off-street locations. When the off-street locations, sort of talk to community halls, village halls, that kind of thing, to see if they would be up for it. And they started off with 4 pilot sites. One is one of the Boys and Girls Club here in Lancaster, and also the Boot and Shoe Pub, which is in Lancaster on the way in on the A6, and a couple of rural sites. Alston, which is up Alston Moor, which is sort of on the Pennines in sort of East Cumbria, it counts as. Pretty isolated up there, but one of the directors used to live there, so I thought that was another good trial site. And then another site over in Broughton in the Furness Peninsula in Cumbria. So started with 4. This is sort of where Innovate got involved and thought, well, that could be a good idea. Let's see if you can scale it up. And Soski is the scaling up project of this idea. And we will have, well, we've now got around 40 sites. We're going to have between 50 and 70 public sites across the Northwest come the end of the, well, come the final end of the project ends at the end of this month, but the final commissioning of some of the sites will spill over. But to qualify for that bit of the project, parking had to be publicly accessible, publicly available, 24/7 ideally, and the site had to be close to housing without off-street parking. So this idea, if you don't have a driveway, you've got an option. And this quite simply meant that a lot of people who suggested their sites, who came to us, particularly those who were in sort of B&Bs and things that just didn't qualify for that thing. But we kept a note of these people because they were generally enthusiastic, and we didn't want to let that enthusiasm go to waste. And certainly here, and I say Northwest, but specifically I'm thinking of Cumbria in this last line here, is that, yes, part of our ethos is providing those residents who don't have driveways with an option, but to a large extent in terms of the whole sort of environmental approach in improving air quality, giving somewhere and encouraging those EV drivers and making them confident they're going to have somewhere to charge when they get to their tourist destination, be it in Lake District National Park or Forest of Bowland or the Yorkshire Dales. Giving them options there is all part of our ongoing strategy, and that's why we came up with the charge while you sleep. Now, your guests wouldn't expect you as a B&B, as a host, to pay for their fuel or stay with you, and also give them some money for petrol to get to their next destination. So why would it be any different for an EV driver, electric vehicle driver? And it's just, it's not viable for a business now, because we as Charge My Street are experiencing exactly the same problems with rocketing electricity prices that everyone. And I've speaking to two B&B owners last week who were newly taking over businesses, so couldn't take over the lock-in that the previous owners had, and the standard commercial tariff is about 30 pence a kilowatt hour. So just as an example, so your Tesla Model 3, which was previously the best-selling electric vehicle in the UK, as of the end of June, was the best-selling vehicle in the UK about 4 of the last 5 months. The standard model, Tesla Model 3, which we see a load of up here in the Northwest now, has a 57 kilowatt hour battery. So, at 30 pence a kilowatt hour, you could be giving away £17 there just to fill it up. I say fill up, it's approximately that. You never really fill it till it's full because the way the battery management is. But basically, you're giving away 17 quid. And if your margins on your B&B or your overnight stay are quite tight, then you can't do that. But you still want your guests to be happy. You still want that provision. And there are grants. There is a grant from the government. But to get the sort of, any new unit from the end of March has to be a smart unit. So it's still quite an outlay, and it's not just the hardware, it's the software, it's the admin, it's the ongoing running costs. And these things, they're still a relatively new technology. And so it's the maintenance and making sure they're up there. But you don't want to be seen as exploiting your guests because, so that's why we thought that having a community benefit society, Charge My Street, as your network provider, might sort of mitigate that sort of thought process on behalf of your guests. Now, I'm going to, be open about this. This is what we are offering is one option. You could install and manage yourself, and in some cases, I think that might be a preferable option because you have that much more control. But it will take proportionally more of your time, and it depends. I know it's very tricky and time poor running B&Bs, certainly. So but there is definitely an option. Another option, certainly, maybe if you've got a larger hotel, sort of guest house, is approach the commercial player in the market. When I mean that, I mean not a community benefit society like us, but one of the BPs in this world, where if they gauge that there'll be enough usage, then they will offer you to lease a bay. And I'm being completely transparent here. That is an option, but they would have to be convinced that they were going to get a return on that. So there'll be a very hard-nosed commercial approach by them. I know what their return expectations are on public bays. So in terms of what usage they would have to see to warrant leasing a public bay off council in a council car park. I'll be honest, I have no idea what it is for a bay in a 6-10 room guest house. So, but I'm just saying that's an option for you. Or there's our option, which is of course the one I'm going to talk about, though I will refer back to the install and manage yourself. Just a very quickie here, and apologies to anybody who's seen other webinars I've done, because I always refer to this, but it's the question Tom, myself, everybody at Charge My Street gets asked more than any other: how long does it take to charge a car? The two factors here, well, the three factors: the car determines the rate of charge in kilowatts, and the size of the battery is measured in kilowatt hours. And charging is either from an AC, so like from your home supply, or a DC rapid. So now DC rapids, these boys. You see the ecotricity ones you see on the motorway service stations, that they're getting phased out, and new ones, grid serves, are going in because they bought them, or the ones that, where's that? That is Aldi down the bottom, isn't it? So, but we're not talking about those big. Those big guys are the DC ones. Those are the rapids. They cost a lot. They cost tens of thousands to put in. It makes sense to have them on motorways because you need a quick delivery, and it makes sense to have them if you're in doing your shop for an hour of a week. But and you can put them in. It makes most sense to put them in when you're building a new Aldi, but they are, I mean, eye-wateringly expensive to put in. So what we're talking about here is little units, exactly the same type that you'd be getting if you had one on your home. It's a single phase 7 kilowatt charger. So connects to your domestic board. I mean, say domestic, you know what I mean? The circuit board you have in your business. And it's just a single charger, and it delivers a 7 kilowatt charge. So what does that mean? Well, one of the most popular vehicles, electric vehicles in the UK, is a Renault Zoe. Its battery, the new ones now, is around 50 kilowatt hour capacity. So you're talking about 7 hours, give or take. It'd actually be slightly more because when the battery almost gets full, the charge rate goes down to protect the battery's health. But you're talking about 7 hours. So that's what we're talking about, charging while you sleep overnight, and just, I won't refer much to this because it just shows, the sort of the appropriate charge point power rating to where you are, and basically you've got your dwell time on the left, you've got the ratings, the speed of the charge at the top, and that's how you figure out what's most suitable. So for charge while you sleep, for your site to be viable, and we've got to be quite tight on our requirements here because digging trenches, loads of armored cable, etc., is just not cost effective. So we need a suitable building supply, and it must be close. We're talking within, let's say, 4 or 5 meters maximum of where the parking bay that you'd allocate to EV charging would be. When I mean a suitable building supply, not an ancient thing that hasn't been looked at, but and another thing to consider is the load on the building. So we might get into trouble if you were purely on electric heating, for example, because certainly this time of year, you'll be running your heating in the evening and to a large extent overnight. But as a general rule, a 7 kilowatt single phase charger running predominantly overnight will not cause problems to your building. And we don't, you don't want to interfere with that. And people, 7 kilowatts is quite a whack. And it's not just like, so you've got a 3 kilowatt kettle, but you're only putting that on to make a cup of tea. So it's only on for 60, 90 seconds, isn't it? We're talking about 7 kilowatt running for 7 hours. And that is quite a load. So it's something to be borne in mind. And Charge My Street reimburses you for all the electricity used, obviously, because that's part of the idea. And I'll refer back to that in a couple of slides' time. And we need connectivity, and it's got to be broadband, because SIMs cost money, and this whole thing is running on quite a tight margin. So SIMs and the data plans cost money, plus certainly in many of the places we come across in the national parks. I'm not just the Lake District, in the Dales, and then in many of the many of the nice tourist places are quite isolated by definition and have pretty poor mobile coverage. So you've got to come off the building, ideally a wired connection. And I've said that using Wi-Fi may be possible. We've just become aware of a new socket that can use that seems to be okay using the Wi-Fi. We've not gone down that road in the past. It's a couple of things, and the reason I've said may be possible is because I've not tested it yet in situ. Once we have tested it, then I can say yay or no on those ones. So that's how it would work, and we'd come in and install it on your building, do all the work, provide the equipment. And so how does your guest who arrives, how do they pay? I mean, how do they operate the thing? So we have two payment options, and they're sort of linked to also the management options you're taking. The simplest one is via using Fuse, is the app that we have had designed for us at Charge My Street. And it is basically the Charge My Street app. It's a phone app. It's also a software backend that we can monitor things and we can interact with the app. But basically, it's the app that lives on your phone, and that's how you begin it. You begin the guest begins the charge session by either scanning the QR code that's on it, and it will automatically launch, or you can select where you are. Basically, the closest, using GPS, the closest socket to where you're standing will be the first one on the list, and you can select that and you start the charge session. I've put other compatible apps there because we're in the process of partnering with other payment options, let's put it for that, and I'll refer to that just shortly. The other option is, and this is sort of works for places where if you've got a guest that's not particularly comfortable, doesn't have a smartphone, or you've got a situation where all the mobile network's gone down, which is what happened with our network yesterday. Not just our network. So many of the electric vehicle charge points in the Northwest were all offline yesterday due to an issue that we're still to get to the bottom of. Anyway, RFID card is back up, so people won't be stranded, which is another of our basic ethos is that if you get stuck, we always have a way we can get around it so that EV drivers won't get stranded. You've got a couple of management options. They're fully managed by us, which is basically we just do it all remotely, but that has to be if the guests are using Fuse or one of the other compatible apps with our system. The other management option is where it's done more as you're providing the service, and then you provide the RFID card to your guest. They charge, and then you add it to their room bill at the end. So it's their sort of final bill will include an amount for EV charging. It involves a bit more work, but it just depends on how you'd like to interact with your guests. So if you go for the first payment and host management option, you have a sign a little bit like that. I'm going to have to update the sign because of the information on the right. So the advantages of the guests using the app to charge. So Fuse, our app, will be used on the socket on your business, but it also will be available for use for your guest across our network, which I'll show you in a moment. But it will also be available for them to use across other networks we have roaming agreements with. We have several at the moment. I'm not going to list them all, but it certainly in the next few months, if you're coming across the Pennines, you'll do it on a single app, and it'll either be our Fuse. If you're going east, then you'll be using the Fuse Charge My Street app, and you'll be able to then use stuff in County Durham. And if County Durham customers are coming west, then they will use the Drives app, which works with the network over there, but they'll use the same app over here. And then they'll also be able to use that app on your on the charge point on your business, and so you won't have any interaction with that. Most exciting at the moment is also Zap Pay. So Zap Map is the basic go-to site and app for EV drivers in the UK. And they've now developed this thing called Zap Pay, which is like Apple or Google Pay, but for EV drivers, which say they will just use their Zap Pay app, and they'll do the same thing scan the QR code. It will just happen in the background, and they'll pay for it. It will happen, and it would be nothing to do with you as the host. And the final, rather clever one is the Octopus Energy electric juice system, which is for EV drivers who have Octopus as their home electricity suppliers. They have this facility, which we are just integrating with. We've signed the contract, but we've got to integrate on a technical level, where the charge session they have at your B&B or your holiday let will then be charged back to their domestic bill. You know, it's a bit geeky, but I find that quite exciting. But as I said there, RFID card will be supplied as backup. So just on a very basic level, I mean, this is, and I know this is a little bit messy, but it doesn't all fit into one screen. So I had to sort of jiggle it about. Our main overall network is the left-hand side of the screen. Light green is the ones that are live, available for use right now. Coming soon are the ones that are in the process of being installed right now. And then you've got, of course, a little bit of detail of up in Carlisle. We've got quite a few because Carlisle City Council are partners on our current project. In the South Lakes area, similarly, South Lakeland District Council are partners. We've done a lot of work, and you can't quite see that, can you? But in the Lancaster and Morecambe area, and then we've got a couple further down towards in the Blackburn area. Of course, Yvonne knows about that. Option B, host management. So if you went for that, now Haven Cottage is our pilot site. It's in Ambleside. It's a 5-room guest house, highly recommended. And they've agreed to be the pilot site for this. And this is basically the dashboard. It's an example of the dashboard they see as the host. You can see there are 2 sessions there. You can see what the charge was delivered. I can tell you actually the second of those 2 charges was a Tesla Model 3. So 46.5 kilowatt hours. So that's quite a hefty amount. And then the owner of Haven Cottage multiplied 46.5 by the rate that we had agreed, and that went on the bill at the end of the guest stay, and then we reconcile the electricity. But yeah, so I'll go to that reconciliation in a second. So there's just a few things here. You can see charging log. You'll be able to see specific drivers on the left there. If something goes wrong, then you can basically raise a maintenance issue ticket, which will come straight through to mine and Tom's dashboard, which looks like this, except much busier. And there's a few other things. You can click on the dashboard top there, and you'll see how much CO2 you've saved by having an EV charging socket on your business. So just little nice things like that. So how's electricity paid for? Fully managed option, which is where the guest uses the Fuse or compatible app, and it's basically nothing to do with your host. You as the host, you are supplying you're supplying a service to your guest, and basically making your business look more attractive than one that hasn't got a charge point on it. And I'm going to just say this here, but at the moment, electric vehicles are very expensive. So if you've got an EV driving guest, they tend to have a little bit more disposable income, which I think is a good thing if I was running a business. So that's this thing. I don't want to put that in writing, but it's just a fact. So the example in a quarter, so let's say we reconcile quarterly. We can do it monthly if there's really high usage, but at the moment we do it quarterly. Say you've had 200 kilowatt hours. That's a Tesla Model 3. Four full charges for that. So it's not outrageous over a quarter, is it? So 200 kilowatt hours. Say you've just signed a new standard rate supply rate with on a commercial rate, so a supplier of 29.5p. At the end of the quarter, we owe you 59 quid. So nice and simple, nice and clean. With the host manage option, it just needs a tiny bit more admin. The host, you charge your guest the agreed amount. Our standard rate is now 40 pence a kilowatt hour. We're trying to soften these rocketing prices, but across our network, that's pretty much what we can cope with and still operate. So, and then each quarter the reconciliation happens, but it happens the other way. because you have collected over and above what the electricity costs. So the same example, 200 kilowatt hours, supply rate is 29.5p. You as the host who collected 80 quid, the electricity cost is 59, so you deduct that, obviously. So you've paid your electricity straight off. You owe us £21. And that goes towards paying back the installation costs. It goes towards the software costs. It goes towards our back end costs. It goes towards our maintenance. And if there's any left over, it goes towards a pie for me and Tom. As I said, there are other options. I don't know about the commercial lease one, but I do know that you can do it yourself. But I would say that, it could be a bit of a pain to administer, and you don't have the advantages that I, referred to earlier of being part of a bigger network. I mean, our ID certainly, and I know we're sort of focusing on Cumbria, but that's where we have our biggest density at the moment, that we are expanding. But our idea is that either a resident or a visitor to Cumbria will be able to stay at a place, and then when they go out for the day, charge at anywhere else on our network or networks with which we have agreements with. And so it would be a seamless thing. You've got one app and you know what you're doing, and all across all those 60, 70 sockets that we have across Cumbria, they'll be able to use. So they can take a little top up. If they've done one of those big drives that go right around the national park, you can take a top up to get them back again. So that's our idea. But I see there in time, you might want to have done it yourself. So that's something to consider. So I've alluded, to the costs here. Where is the money for this installation, for the installations coming from? Because we're talking, thousands give or take, but probably a little bit more for a proper commercial installation. So community shares is where the funding for Charge My Street comes from, now that we don't have the Innovate funding anymore. So it's all community shares. But people, our community shareholders, have bought into this idea of driving the change to EV, and so it's a genuine and proper use of their shareholder money. There is also low carbon funding available from local authorities that is part of the big sort of dish out from the Treasury that was 681 million or something. So that's all coming from that low carbon funding, though this funding that's appearing at the moment is probably from an earlier round of funding. And then regional organisations, so certainly the Lake District Foundation is administering a fund that is still left over from the European Development Fund round of funding. So it's a mixture. Certainly the funding from local authorities is only available to certain groups, and then we as Charge My Street have to match fund it with our community shares. So it's not as straightforward, but it's a mixture of those three funding streams. And then another question that I get is, what is one socket enough? And the answer is for now, probably. So, if you think there are two issues here, that there are a number of increasing number of EVs on the road, but there's still quite a small percentage. And I think with a general sort of, working with your guests, people don't have to charge every night. If you got, a 50 kilowatt hour battery in your EV, you can travel 200 miles minimum. So you're not really going to have to, charge every night. So you can, talk to your guests, figure out who needs what, who's traveling a long way the next day, who are just going to stay in the local area, and like that. Probably the more important here is the DNO, so the distribution network operator, which here is the Electricity Northwest. There are considerations there. If you start putting loads of sockets, then you gain their attention. When you put a single socket on in any building, whether it's commercial or residential, you have to submit a form to them. Some people don't, but you have to do that. You submit the form, and this alerts them to the fact that there's extra drain on the network. The DNOs have an agreement with Ofgem that as long as you don't change your draw on the network too significantly, then if there's any network reinforcement that needs to take place, then it's Electricity Northwest, the DNO, that has to bear that cost. So that's why you don't want to put your head too far above the parapet at this moment in time. The new agreement between Ofgem and the network operators is in progress at the moment, the discussions, and that will come into effect in 2023. So that may change, but at that point, that's maybe when you want to expand sockets. But I would say just to get things moving, one is enough for now. A single 7 kilowatt socket is not going to cause you problems. And if there's anything that needs doing on your local network, it's not your issue to deal with it, either legally or financially. And so, and not ours as well. So you begin the process, and in time you'll evolve it as the rules change with Ofgem. It's a little bit in depth, sorry about that. Anyway, that's it. I'm sure you've got questions, but that's our idea. I hope you like it. We're looking to roll it out. So our current project comes to an end at the end of this month. We've got some tidying up to do through February, but we'd like to start rolling this out as soon as possible. That's me.
Just to say, the installer, the local installer that we use, will do those forms for you.
Yes.
I don't want anyone thinking that they have to do those forms. Yeah, no. We will do all that for you and update that. Okay, so we've got a. What we'll do now is we've got a good half an hour to go through people's questions. If you use the raise hand function at the bottom, it lets me know you want to speak, and I will let you speak rather than having everyone type in the chat. And then if we go from there, that would be great. So if anyone has a question, please raise your hand. So I'm going to go with Magnus first. So I've allowed you to talk. You just need to unmute yourself and then you go ahead.
Hiya. I'm a Magnus substitute, actually. What criteria do you want hosts to meet? We have a campsite.
Well, it's an overnight hospitality thing. That seems very much exactly what this is designed for. You know, people charging while they're sleeping. So I think our criteria is I think it would depend on. No, but I'm assuming it has some size. This campsite. It's not just.
We get up to well, in vehicles we get between 30 and 40 vehicles. Well, 30 and 40 vehicles.
Well, yes, I mean, so and if you look at the current percentage of EVs, you're going to be seeing EVs every week, every weekend, aren't you? So they need somewhere to charge. I think it would be more the technical aspect, really. It's the power, how you get the power to the parking area. But yes, I mean that's exactly what we're on about. People who are coming to wherever you are need to be able to charge, and it makes their experience better, doesn't it? And happy guests come back, as we all know. So yeah, that sounds perfect. Where are you? Sorry.
Ravenstonedale.
Yeah, you've been in contact. Yeah.
We have, yeah.
Yes, definitely. Okay, you said so. I think I emailed you back a long time ago, and I apologise. We just not had the time to do this properly. Exactly the type of place we're talking about, because it's miles to the. Well, you got a couple of charges in Kirby, haven't you, at Booth? But yes, we want to make things easy.
We haven't. I don't think we've got any in Kirby. The booths is at Kirby Lonsdale.
Oh, it's true. Sorry. Yeah. I'm in the wrong bit. Yeah. So exactly that kind of place. Definitely. So yes, we'd love to help.
Great.
Okay. If anyone else wants to pop their hand up, and we will allow you to ask questions if it hasn't been covered already.
I'm happy to go back to any of the slides if you want to see them again, or if you want to query something on a specific slide. He said, trying to figure out how to do that. Oh no, I've done it. There we go. It's unnerving. I can't have made that much sense.
A few through, so I'm going to go with, just because it's in order, I'm just going to go with Joanne first. Just unmute yourself.
Oh, is that a hot tub, Joanne?
Oh, hot tub.
That's what it looks like. On your picture, your profile picture.
Oh yeah. Oh yes. That's a hot tub.
Sunny day, hot tub, and a glass of bubbly. Gosh.
It's always sunny here. Yeah.
Oh, is it now?
Yeah. Basically, you were just saying about possibly looking at other slides. Would it be possible to see the slides after we've come off the webinar?
Oh yes, we're going to. Yeah, the full deck will be shared with everyone that's on here,
as well as the recording.
And the recording as well. So yeah.
Right. I'm definitely interested. We only have 5 pods at our site. We're only a small site, and but we do have decent broadband, which might be helpful. But it's something we've been interested in for a while, but just not quite sure what the best way has been to go about it. So yeah, I shall be in touch. It sounds great.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, five pods is fine. You know, you're still gonna. I would say, you know, looking how nice it is, you're still every couple of weeks you're gonna have an EV turn up, aren't you?
We do get them, and we end up with cables trailing across the car park, and it's not ideal at all.
No, not ideal at all. And
no.
plus, so I can't put this up straight away, but one thing I will put on for the next time I do the webinar, your location will appear on ZapMap. So ZapMap is, as I said, the go-to app and website for EV drivers in the UK. It will appear on ZapMap with its live status and the type of charger that's there. But it will also say that this is restricted to guests only. But it does mean that an EV driving an EV potential guest, obviously it will say on your website and on your booking procedure, EV charging available. So that's a good thing. But in terms to driving them to that, if they start searching around on the map, that map is it's a mass of all these charge points. So people drill in and zoom into where they're going to be, then they'll see that there's a charge point. You know, think, well, that's close to where I want to be, and then they'll say, well, it's at this actual camping pod site.
And we have the ability to edit the description of that ZapMap site. So we will definitely link your hospitality venue in the description link. I think we have well over nearly 1 million users visiting the site.
So we can drive the business in both ways. You know, you're looking more attractive, but also EV drivers who basically, if their prerequisite of where they're going to stay is they've got to be able to charge, because maybe they're staying for a couple of nights when they're heading off to Scotland or something. You know, that if they're just going on where the EV charge points are, then we can drive the business to the places that are on our network where the charge points are. Yeah,
that makes sense. Definitely. Great. Thank you. That's great.
Me and AD do require full use of hot tubs at all times, by the way, and heavy discounts.
Yeah.
Oh, ethical.
Thank you. I'm just going to move on to Sue Nichols now. So I've allowed you to talk, Sue, if you just unmute yourself.
Hey, Sue.
I'm Sue Nichols. I'm from Rookhouse Quaker Meeting House and Bunk Barn in the Rosalind Valley.
Lovely.
And just a couple of quick questions. Firstly, planning. We're a Grade 2 star listed building. I'm assuming we don't need any planning from the Lake District National Park.
Cracking question, actually, because the planning, yes, most probably not. Okay, so just as I was talking just yesterday about this, so we are, as part of the other project, we're installing some at Rydal Hall, connecting into their hydro scheme, and that's Grade 2 listed as well. I think it's Grade 2 star as well, Rydal Hall. And so that had to go to the planner. The National Park Authority have still, after 2 months, failed to actually allocate a planner to it. But it looks like, you know, all it is a tiny socket. And I think once we get that one, and actually at Rydal Hall, the socket won't be wall mounted, it'll be on a post. But I think once we get a precedent from that, which should be this week, which is a yes, it's not having no impact, it's invisible from the road, it's invisible from most parts of the property. I think once we get that precedent, then we should be able to just safely say no, or we just phone up the same duty planner and goes, we're putting it on here, is that fine? And they'll go, yes. And I found the duty planners at the national park are quite good with that kind of thing. But it should be just a phone call, I would have thought.
Okay, and then another 2 quick questions. One is, I'm not sure, because of the nature of the building, whether it would work because of the Wi-Fi and the distance to the electrical point. Would you do a tech visit to come and check before we even start the process and say it's not going to work, you know, it's too far out, whatever? You do that early on and see.
Yeah, I mean, ask me, come and visit the Lake District. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
Great.
no,
Okay,
definitely.
I'll
Yeah,
ask you
we
that.
can do that. Yeah.
And then the last question, a bit of an obvious one, which I might have missed. Is there no cost to us as the host?
Correct.
Amazing.
So it's supposed to be, yeah,
So-
the term that we've used is cost neutral. You know, obviously we have a commercial consideration in that we've got to sort of recoup stuff, and we hope to in time, but you know, it's a big ask, and our projection on usage and stuff shows that it's not until between month 50 and 60 that you're actually going to recoup costs, which is quite a long ask, really. Obviously, if you've got if you've got a charge point at Aldi, or you've got a charge point on the motorway, you've got a high footfall. I don't even know what you call the equivalent, but you're going to get usage. But there's not much money to be made out of putting them in rural places at the moment. That's the bottom line. But we've been very fortunate in that we have the backers. We had the backing of Innovate, and now we now have the backing of our community shareholders to try it out, because we can't. It just in the same way that, you know, everybody raves about 5G in Manchester and London. I mean, you know, any G in certain areas up here would be lovely. So yeah, it's you know, it's trying to balance things up. So yeah.
And so
But, you know, yeah, sorry.
Only technical questions. So we're using local air contractors of Lancaster, Morecambe and Carnforth that we've used before in previous work and projects. They will come and do their own technical visit, as well as potentially an AD visit, which is half technical, half come use your hot tub. But,
don't have a hot tub. But yeah.
well, you've already failed, so I'm afraid.
We have, haven't we?
I'll just take a coffee.
But yeah, so we absolutely someone will come locally, and we make sure we use local people as well, because it puts jobs back into the local community, but it also stops people from driving miles and miles from Milton Keynes, for example, to come all the way up. See, it's not very good. They've put CO2 back into the air, and then they've gone back down again. So we always make sure to use local people to do those visits.
Great, I'll be in touch. Thank you.
Cool, thanks, Sue.
Okay, so has anyone got any other questions? If you do, please pop your hand up or type something in the chat. As we've said before, the recording and the slides will be sent this afternoon if people want to have a look around. And also feel free to email us at hello@chargemystreet if you have any emails. That is done by myself and Adi. Three-man band.
Yeah.
When it comes to these things, so
I mean, yeah, it's the co-op thing. You know, Tom's comms and stuff, and I'm project manager. But the fact is, and there's a few more of us in the background. I mean, not in the background here, but everybody does everything. I mean, that's the nature of the business we're trying to do. We all cover each other, and yeah, everyone does everything here, and that's how we like it at the moment.
excellent.
So, if you had an issue, for example, just another question that might be, if there's an issue with your charge point, you basically will call us, and 95% of the time either me or Tom will answer the phone, and you'll certainly have my personal number anyway. So if it's, you know, an urgent thing out of hours, then you'll be able to just contact me directly. So that's another advantage of doing it with our type of organization.
Just got another question. If you can talk now.
It's not Magnus.
It's not Magnus.
It's Rosie. So we have a charge point outside, and people access it through their app and either pay through their app or we charge them.
If they've gone through the app, then they'll just pay through the app. That's just all a closed network, because their card details will be saved, not actually within the app, but they'll be saved on the card provider that's connected to the app, securely saved. So yeah.
Are there any scams possible? Pardon, I don't usually ask cynical questions like this, but but 17 quid a night. Yeah. Is it possible for people to scam the thing or not?
Not on your part. for the very simple reason that, so the risk there is ours, not yours. So because we have a software, we have that dashboard that our dashboard looks like that, yeah, where we can see the charge delivered, but that is just a software report of the charge from the unit. If a scam has happened, then it wouldn't appear on there, but you'd still be down. And so, I mean, you'd still be down on electricity usage. I mean, up. I mean, you had high electricity usage. But when we do the reconciliation, we ask you to physically read the meter. So the unit is metered like, you know, like a standard electricity meter. And so that shows the absolute number. So just looking at Haven here, that's 49 kilowatt hours, give or take, isn't it? But say there'd been a scam. I don't know how you do it. If I did, I'd close the loophole, but that's 49 kilowatt hours, and that's what we base it on. But say somebody had managed to sneak a session in somehow, it would appear on the meter. So it would, you know, it wouldn't say 49 kilowatt hours. The meter reading would be 60, 70. That's what we pay. We pay the physical, not the software.
Yeah.
So the only scam can be through some kind of software thing. Maybe they had some kind of I don't know, RFID card that was ultra smart. I don't know. I can't think of it.
Well, that's fine. But
yeah, it's what your meter says is what we pay, not what the software says.
And the broadband connection.
Yeah.
Where is that? You say you'd like a wired one. Where is it wired to? To the charge point, or?
To the router that goes from the router to the charge point. Router
to the charge point.
Now, as I said, we're just trialing a thing where if you've got Wi-Fi across the campsite or a little sort of hotspot somewhere, then, you know, that might be possible to link in, but I'm not committing to that until I've actually tried it and I've seen it properly working.
It's important to say as well that we're not tied to one specific charge point manufacturer.
No.
So in our previous project, we used EO charge points, which have been fine. We've got a few errors, but they've been fine.
These are Rolex.
Each location can have its own specific charge point if it needs it. So these are called Rolex chargers. So they've just got a little flap there that you put the cable in, and they are hardwired. However, as Adi said, there are some charge points that are able to use SIMs. Some of the SIMs we've learned are actually as part of the cost of the charge point. So there's not a huge monthly amount for the data usage on that SIM. But as we found yesterday, when the signal network goes down, so when EE 023, who all went down in Lancaster and Carlisle areas yesterday, the charge points aren't usable, and it's the last thing that we want. So that's why we always try to use the hardwired Wi-Fi Ethernet from your router. Obviously, we provide all the cabling and things and do all the cabling for it. But then there are scenarios that we could potentially use Wi-Fi signal, just like you would on your phone, to connect to your router.
And it's not a huge amount of data that's going backwards and forwards. It's just quite consistent. It's a tiny message. Basically, the charge point sends a message to our back end every 5 minutes, and then would just update, you know, like that. And so it's not much data. So you wouldn't, if you had a data cap, which this still exists, but if you had a data cap, it wouldn't have any impact or have minimal impact on that.
Okay, so
she's back.
Yeah,
she's back.
Charles next. So if you,
I don't know who Charles is.
Hello?
Hi Charles.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I just wanted to know sort of how long do these charge points last? How long do they, you know, how long are they likely to last? And have you ever had any issues with breakages? Please.
I didn't mean to laugh. No, okay. So how long do they last? They're built to last. They're built to last. The question more really is, when will they be superseded? I would have said. I'd think that they will still be operational. We will want to replace them with newer technology before they break. So I think it's more a case of technology moving at a quite a pace. But yes, so I say something to think the first to 3. Oh no, wait a second, we're 2022 now, aren't we? So 3.5 years our units on the Boys and Girls Club in Lancaster have been there. It still seems working fine. They're maintained and serviced each year. So yeah, the reason I giggled is that these charge points last very, very, very well unless you have a drunk driver destroy them, which is what we had with one of our sites on Boxing Day. I mean, absolutely destroyed a whole site in Brampton. So yeah, as long as people don't drive into them, they seem to work fine.
Thank you.
And we always do make sure that they're in areas like tucked around a corner like that. So there's definitely enough room for people to wire up, but also potentially you may have people in wheelchairs or aren't able to walk very well or anything like that. So we do make sure that there is enough room around the charge point to move around and their vehicle at the same time. I thought that was worth just adding in.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions? I'm not sure if Rosie, your hand is still up from before, or if it is another question, but I'm not sure. Okay, so
She's gone down.
if there's no other questions, I think we will leave it there. But please do email if you have anything. I will send an email out to you all with the slides and the recording. But please do reply to that email if you have any questions, and we will be in contact probably mid-Feb to start the ball rolling. And
Sure.
because we need to, as we said before, we need to make sure that these charge points are still not outstanding, but still they're in the ground. We've got a few works to do with them. You'll see them popping up in your local area, hopefully, and they need to be finished. And then as soon as they are finished, we will be moving on to charge while you sleep.
Excellent.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Please do get in touch, and we will we'll end that there for you.